Maya Park stood at the window of her studio on Western Avenue and watched ferries cut pale wakes across Elliott Bay. She loved the whistles and gull cries that drifted up to her loft, but lately she had been listening for something else entirely, the faint buzz-click of brass gears and carbon fiber wings. Weeks earlier, Maya's tiny company, Feather Fables, had released its first full product line, wind-up songbirds that could flutter off a child's outstretched hand, chirp a handful of programmable calls, and then fold neatly back into a pocket-sized perch. She had spent 3 years perfecting the design, balancing Victorian clockwork aesthetics with modern microcontrollers, until each figurine felt halfway between heirloom and gadget. She thought, naively, that the only surprises left were the pleasant kind. On Monday morning, the first email arrived, a terse request from a security chief at Milburn Analytics, one of Seattle's most secretive data mining giants. According to the message, a Feather Fables robin had landed on CEO Tracy Milburn's desk during a quarterly all-hands meeting and played an audio file, a gravelly voice, demanding that the company redirect 10% of all incoming acquisition budgets to an offshore account, or face an expose of Milburn's personal life. Cameras caught the entire boardroom frozen in silent shock, while the cheerful little bird issued its threat, then hopped to the CEO's laptop and stuck there magnetically, another of Maya's thoughtful features now turned ominous. Maya reread the email twice before calling the number at the bottom. The security chief answered with clipped suspicion. "We need your internal firmware schematics, Miss Park. If we find the exploit originated on your end, we'll involve federal authorities." "I designed the firmware myself," Maya said, feeling her voice tighten. "There's no remote payload capability. The birds sync only through a proximity app, and the app uses encrypted Bluetooth." "Someone found a back door," the chief's tone implied. She might be standing at it. "We've already pulled 6 more birds from conference rooms up and down the coast, all delivered the same blackmail instructions, different account numbers." The call ended with a formal request for cooperation and a promise of further action. Maya leaned against her drafting table, staring at a half-assembled blue jay. Her hands remembered childhood hours in her grandfather's basement, rewinding tin racers and prying music boxes open to peer at the metal spines, certain that tiny, benign universes lived inside. She felt that kind-hearted certainty thinning now, like spun sugar under a flame. She spent the afternoon combing through code. Nothing looked tampered with on GitLab, and the compiled binaries on her local machine matched checksums from the day of release. Without a reproducible exploit, she would have to wait until one of the blackmail birds came home to roost. By dusk, her inbox offered just such a specimen. Seattle PD's Cybercrimes Division had seized an offending cardinal from the offices of Deep Cord, a streaming audio unicorn whose leadership happened to be midtown neighbors with Feather Fables. Would she consent to examine the device under police supervision? Maya biked through Belltown drizzle to the precinct. Detective Elias Mercer met her in a windowless lab that smelled of overbrewed coffee and disordering flux. He slid a plastic evidence tray across the stainless steel table. Inside, the cardinal lay still, wings folded in that gentle parabola children always found huggable. A USB quarantine cable snaked from its belly to an air-gapped workstation. "How bad is it?" Maya asked. Mercer tapped the monitor. "We extracted an audio file stored in a hidden partition. Same ransom voice, same demands. Timestamp says the file copied over 2 days ago." "Impossible without a wireless link," Maya muttered. But the moment the words left her, she saw the loophole. The birds charged via inductive pads that doubled as update stations in retail stores. A stealth flash there could infect hundreds of units at once. Feather Fables had partnered with Busy Bee Toys, a downtown chain, for in-store demos. Any customer could wind, play, and return a bird to its dock, an elegantly open system begging for contamination. Mercer arched an eyebrow at her silence. "Care to translate?" "Someone loaded malware at the charging stations," she explained. "The toys never phone home, so we didn't see a distribution spike." She closed her eyes, mapping the supply chain. Demo birds rotated weekly between stores and corporate gifting vendors. If a saboteur wanted to target executives, they could bribe a stocker to shuffle infected units into the VIP inventory. Who received this particular cardinal? The detective checked the log. A gift basket from Busy Bee Toys' corporate program, delivered to Deep Chord's founder. A memory clicked. 4 months earlier, Feather Fables had inked a cross-promotion with Busy Bee's event concierge, an amicable ex-co-worker of Maya's named Evan Rossi. He handled bulk orders for holiday parties and conference swag, a potently direct pipeline to boardrooms. That night, back in her studio, Maya phoned Evan. "Tell me you lock your charging stations." A pause, then a sheepish laugh. "They're in a storeroom after hours." "Why?" "Because someone's using our birds for blackmail," Evan swore. "You heard about Milburn?" "I've had reporters calling all day, but come in, Maya. We just set birds on chargers and run diagnostics. It's like 5 minutes. Nobody's sneaking in." "Unless they already work there," she countered. "When's your next shift? I need to inspect every dock." Evan sighed. "Tomorrow at 6 a.m. But you'll have to clear it with corporate security." His voice dropped. "Maya, we used to hack printers together in college. If you're hunting malware, you need Samir. Samir Jain, their old dorm floor cryptography prodigy turned cloud secretary consultant, had swapped caffeine for rare tea and seldom left Capitol Hill." Maya hesitated. They hadn't spoken since their startup fell apart senior year. Collateral damage of equal parts ambition and unspoken attraction. Yet if anyone could dissect weaponized firmware, it was Samir. At dawn she brought espresso and contrition to his walk-up. He opened the door in wool socks and asked, "You broke $1 billion company's toys?" "They broke mine," she corrected and explained between gulps. Samir listened, expression unreadable behind circular lenses, until she finished with a plea for help. "For old times," he said, then grabbed a peacoat and a portable logic analyzer. Together they entered Busy Bee's Pioneer Square flagship before doors opened. Evan greeted them amid cardboard towers of plush bears and stem kits, the store's pastel calm shattered by his anxious pacing. He handed them a master keycard to the demo room. Inside, 30 charging cradles lined a countertop like a metallic orchard, each occupied by a sleeping bird. Samir began attaching his analyzer to the data coil under one dock. The scope's screen flickered with hex values. "Standard firmware scroll," he murmured, scrolling. "Wait, here's a secondary bootloader." Maya leaned over. "That isn't mine. It's signed," Samir said, puzzling at the header, but not by Feather Fable's CERD. He transferred the code to a laptop, ran a hash and cross-referenced public repositories. In under a minute he whistled. "Whoever wrote this published a proof of concept 6 months ago under the handle Clockhand. Last commit from a co-working space in Fremont." Maya's stomach dipped. Clockhand was the forum alias of Jonah Brooks, her former lead mechanical engineer, fired a year earlier after diverting company funds to moonlight on a drone startup. Jonah had accused her of stifling his creative genius, she of embezzlement. The split turned rancorous and public, each blocking the other on social media, and now it felt painfully obvious. The bird's hack combined intimate knowledge of her circuitry with Jonah's flair for theatrical mechanics. Samir read her expression. "We pay Jonah a visit." "He moved to San Francisco," she said, recalling LinkedIn gossip. "But his old workshop lease runs until summer. We could find hardware traces." Detective Mercer, apprised by phone, agreed to expedite a warrant on the Fremont space if they gathered preliminary evidence. While Evan closed the store, Maya and Samir slipped out with 3 infected birds and, at Samir's insistence, pastries. "Stakeouts require carbs," he declared. The workshop occupied a converted cannery overlooking the ship canal, windows fogged with age. They parked across the street. Rain feathered the windshield as they watched for movement. The only light inside flickered from a second-floor desk lamp. After 30 minutes, a lanky figure in a parka exited the alley door and walked towards Stone Way. Jonah, unmistakable even at distance, still favoring his right knee from a climbing injury. Samir texted Mercer the update, while Maya's pulse skittered. "Follow, or wait for the detective?" Samir asked. "Follow," she said before fear could revise her mouth. They tailed Jonah to an all-night print shop, where he dropped a padded envelope in a courier box labeled Skyridge Legal Services. Back on the sidewalk, he turned suddenly, scanning the street. Maya's breath locked as his gaze brushed over their car, though the fogged glass must have hidden them. Jonah then ducked into a karaoke bar. Samir shrugged. "More time for police." When Mercer's squad arrived, the officer in charge produced the warrant. Inside the workshop, they found not the mad scientist chaos Maya expected, but a meticulous lab. Oak benches, labelled drawers, drill press gleaming like sculpture. On the central table stood a rack of Feather Fable's cradles, each charging a different variant robins, cardinals, wrens, while a monitor scrolled logs of deployment schedules beside a map of Seattle's corporate headquarters. A second screen displayed spreadsheets matching executives' names to potential scandals, notes scraped from dark web rumor boards. Jonah had industrialized extortion. Mercer's digital forensics unit imaged drives. Maya wandered the room in a state of surreal grief. She touched a half-finished Kingfisher prototype, identical to her unreleased concept sketches, its wing gearing coated in the graphite lubricant she alone had favored. In Jonah's hands, her dream had been twisted until it pointed at her own industry heroes. Behind a partition, they discovered a laser cutter mid-job. Blackmail notes etched onto rice paper scrolls small enough to tuck beneath a bird's hinged chest plate. The cutter hummed, paused, and traced the next message. "To the board of Next Step Quantum. Fund the account or your CEO takes the fall." The letters looked elegant, as if the machine believed it were penning love poetry. "Tell me he worked alone," Maya whispered to Samir. "No one else from my team?" Samir squeezed her shoulder. "We'll find out." At dawn, officers arrested Jonah in the karaoke bar's private room, mid-rendition of White Room. When Mercer later questioned him, Jonah made a single statement before lawyering up. "Maya stole my future. I'm reclaiming my dues." Damage control began immediately. News outlets had already latched on to bird-bot black-mold headlines. Feather Fables teetered on the cliff of bankruptcy by association. Milburn Analytics threatened a multi-million-dollar suit. Others prepared class actions. Even innocent parents demanded refunds, fearing their children's toys might start spouting threats at breakfast. Mercer's team confirmed that Jonah alone had injected the malicious bootloader, assisted by an automated signing tool that spoofed Feather Fable's certificate authority. No evidence linked Maya or any current employee. Still, reputational bruises kept deepening. Investors whose hearts had warmed to clockwork nostalgia now wanted nothing to do with mechanical birds. One evening, as rain tangled neon reflections on the studio floor, Maya considered shuttering. She pictured boxes of unsold inventory stacked in dead warehouses, a silent aviary. The thought sucked breath from her ribs. Samir arrived with takeout and a whiteboard. "We fix this," he said. "Design a patch, push it at every charging dock, make the birds sing something joyful at the end, a gesture of goodwill. Then we open source the firmware so anyone can audit." Maya doubted public forgiveness could be engineered like a software update, but Samir's certainty anchored her. They spent nights writing new code that not only erased Jonah's payload, but also added a secure element handshake requiring physical button presses before any future firmware install. Samir embedded a failsafe to brick the device if tampering was detected. He even wrote a script to play an apology on first reboot, a robin's trill followed by Maya's recorded voice. "Hi, friend. Ready for new adventures?" instead of the corporate jargon PR consultants had drafted. Pulling diplomatic strings, Mercer arranged for the update to be rolled out to corporate inventories first, assuaging executives' fears. Busy Bee's staff distributed update pads to households that registered their toys. Within 2 weeks, nearly 80% of units were patched. Kids posted videos of their birds chirping the new greeting. The story shifted from scandal to redemption, enough for local news anchors to end segments with a smile. And still, lawsuits loomed. Milburn ignored Feather Fable's remediation reports, intent on seeking damages. Samier proposed an unorthodox counterplay, revealed Jonah's broader scheme and framed Feather Fables as an essential whistleblower. Mercer supplied sealed evidence showing Jonah had targeted not just blackmail, but stock manipulation, his offshore accounts linked to short positions against each company he threatened. When reporters saw the bigger con, headlines pivoted again. Milburn quietly withdrew its suit, unwilling to expose how close its boardroom came to paying extortion. Spring edged into Seattle with shy cherry blossoms. Feather Fable's sales crept back up, buoyed by sympathetic parents and collectors who prized the Contransufse's limited edition prints. Maya launched a transparency blog. The community blossomed. Someone taught a robin to whistle the mariner's fight song. A middle school robotics club tweaked a wren to flap in Morse code. One rainy Saturday, Maya and Samir took a ferry to Bainbridge, carrying 2 prototype kingfishers freed at last from legal quarantine. On the upper deck, they wound the keys. The birds lifted from their palms, gears humming in gentle sync. They circled the rail once, then glided out over dark water, wings catching gusts that smelled of salt and cedar. Maya watched until the shapes became specks. "Do you think they'll make it back?" Samir shrugged. "Depends on the wind." He leaned against the rail. "We never did talk about what happened senior year. I dropped the ball." "You brewed 12 straight pots of coffee and coded for 50 hours, she said. "I threw a wrench through a whiteboard. We were kids." His laugh was small, rueful. "I'm not a kid now." She turned, the deck wind tangling her hair. "Then maybe design something with me again. No blackmail scripts, just wonder." Samir tapped the pocket that held a miniature Arduino. "I already started. Thought the Kingfisher could dock with a phone and read bedtime stories." Maya smiled, warm as fairy lights. "Let's make it tell the stories kids ride themselves." Above them, the Kingfishers wheeled back into view, as if heeding some secret beacon. They alighted on the rail, wings ticking, before hopping down to Maya's palm. She felt the tiny heart of her invention pulse a gyre of gears, springs, and clean slate. She kissed the smooth brass head and whispered, "Welcome home." And for the first time since the blackmail scandal broke, the moment felt wholly hers, unsullied and bright as the open sky those little wings promised. The ferry's horn sounded, long and low. Ahead, Seattle's skyline shimmered like circuitry beneath a lid of cloud. Somewhere in those towers, executives sat uneasily, perhaps glancing now and then at the small birds perched on their desks, reminders that even the loveliest systems could be repurposed by bitterness, and if their makers were brave, reclaimed by care. Maya wound the key again, set the Kingfisher aloft, and watched it spiral into grey, sunlit distance, a note of earned serenity fluttering over the sound.